ever use fire from heaven? Let's go back to Genesis, and in this Genesis story, chapter 4, verses 4 and 5, we find where God had respect for Abel's offering, but not for Cain. I believe that meant fire from heaven, because over and over in the Old Testament, when God had respect for an offering, there was fire on it. There was one in Leviticus 9, Judges 6, 1 Kings 18, 1 Chronicles 21, and 2 Chronicles 7. It was a regular occurrence. And the primary or premier illustration of that was on Mount Carmel in 1 Kings 18, 37 to 40, where Elijah had the showdown with all the priests of Baal. And for half of the day they shout and they scream, asking for their God to bring fire down from heaven. And he said, hey, speak a little louder. Maybe your God's asleep. Maybe he's on vacation. Louder, guys, louder. And after they're worn out, he takes 12 stones, builds an altar, digs a trench around it, has them go down to the sea, bring up water, pour water all over the altar so that it's drenched. The ditch around the altar is full. And then he quietly prays, and there's a zap from heaven, and the sacrifice, the wet sacrifice, the wet wood, the wet stones, and the water in the ditch are all gone. They're vaporized. And everybody's going, Elijah's God, he's the real one? He's the real God? He called fire down from heaven and zapped that altar. And they were all hoping they weren't going to get that next. It was a showdown of who the real God was. And as we come into the New Testament in Acts chapter 2, what happened when the Holy Spirit was poured out? There were tongues of fire. And when those tongues of fire came down on their heads, they began to speak in other tongues, sharing the gospel across language barriers, and they also were signs, wonders, and miracles, didn't they? Oh, now maybe this will begin to tell you that God is warning us that in the last days, He's going to let Satan be the one to bring fire down from heaven, and since He's pre-warned you, if you love the truth, you don't need to be deceived. Is it going to be literal fire or spiritual fire? One or the other or both. I already know Satan is using it in spiritual fire. A counterfeit of the Holy Spirit. Now we need to be really careful that we don't throw any lumping of the Holy Spirit, just throw everything out and ignore everything the Holy Spirit related. But we need to be very sure that we do not get deceived by a counterfeit or false Holy Spirit. I'm going to illustrate